Hi Yogi, and welcome to another slow flow class with me, Oceana. As you've probably already seen from the title, we're diving into another 4 weeks of special focus on one set of yoga postures, and now we're really looking at forward folds. So as the name would suggest, oftentimes in forward folds we're really aiming to fold the body in half. So we might be trying to get our belly all the way onto the thighs, and that might be sort of the ultimate goal of the pose. If you know you have tight hamstrings, then this might already be filling you with loads of trepidation, but I will be giving you some ways to work around those sort of muscular restrictions, ways that you can start to gradually work into these stretches over time while staying safe. If you have a more advanced practice, but you're here because you gradually want to build up towards the advanced sequences, I think that's fabulous. I really think it is so beneficial, even if we're teachers, even if we've been doing this for 50 years, to always come back to these foundational postures. This is where we're putting in the groundwork. This is where we know where our practice is at. We can check back in with these poses and see how we're progressing. And I think as well, it's always helpful to come back to these poses with a beginner's mindset and see how we can approach them differently, how we could do them in a more accommodating way for our own body. So regardless of where you're at in your practice, I think this is a great sequence to explore your forward folds with. Technically, you don't need any props today. We will be rolling up our yoga mat to support our sitting bones in the seated folds. So if you don't have a yoga mat, you'll want to grab a pillow or blanket to substitute. And we will be starting lying on our back with the knees bent and the feet flat on the floor. So once you're ready, join me there, Yogi. Once you find your way onto your back body, you can either keep the feet hip distance with the knees pointing up, or if it's okay for your knees, you can walk the feet to the outer edges of the mat and let the knees drop in, so that you're creating a little bit of extra space in the back body where the sacrum is. We'll have the hands resting on top of the belly for a moment and closing the eyes if that's comfortable, or otherwise simply softening the gaze by widening your peripheral vision. So you're sort of slightly blurring the gaze. And from here, just having a couple of moments to check in with yourself on the various levels that we're interested in our yoga practice. So for a moment, just checking in with the physical body, checking in with the emotional body, our mind, and sort of making a little mental note of the types of thought that are running through the mind. And equally checking in with your breath. So noticing the quality of your breath, whether it's easy or a little bit tense, whether there's pauses between the inhale or exhale, whether the inhale is longer than the exhale or vice versa. Just creating a little bullet point list of what is going on today before we move into our practice. And from here, gently when you're ready, bring the feet hip distance again so the knees point up towards the ceiling. One knee at a time draws in towards your chest, and you're going to bring each hand on top of its own knee. And here, very simple movement as we limber into the legs and hip joint. As you inhale, let the knees float forward to the front of the mat. Let the arms straighten and notice that slight curve in the lower back. As you exhale, draw the knees back in, flatten the spine against the floor. And again, inhale, let the knees move away, let the belly fill with air. Exhale, belly empties, and you draw the knees in towards yourself. Just moving with the breath a couple rounds here. Really matching the movement to the length of your own breath cycle, which is how we start to make this practice a little bit more individual to ourselves. And the next time that you draw the knees in towards yourself, keep them there. As you inhale, we're going to keep the big toes touching, but let the knees circle out wide away from each other. Let them drift forward. And then as you exhale, bring the knees back together and draw them in. So just circling the knees in this way a couple of rounds with the breath, so that you're limbering the thigh bone as it moves in the hip socket. And again here, the next time that you draw the knees in towards the chest, keep them there. This time as you inhale, let the knees drift forward and then take them out wide away from one another, and exhale to draw them back in. So for a few rounds, we'll circle the knees in the opposite direction. And again, see if you can make this movement match your breath cycle exactly. Next time that your knees are drawn in towards the chest, again, keep them there. Transfer both of your hands onto the left shin and let the right foot come to the floor. Allow the knee to draw a little bit past your left rib cage, aiming it more towards the left armpit, and then start to straighten the right leg along the mat if that's okay for your hip joints. From here, you can take a moment to maybe shimmy the knee forward and back to ease a little bit into that hip joint, just very gentle circles of the knee maybe, and then relaxing it in, drawing it in towards the rib cage. From here, we'll interlace the hands a normal way behind the back of the knee, and then see if we can reach the foot up towards the ceiling. Now, especially because it's the beginning of class, you might want to keep a really deep bend on that top knee, or you might have space to straighten it just a little bit more. We'll flex the toes towards the shin here, and we'll limber the feet and ankle a bit. So from here, flexing the toes very strongly back towards the shin, you're going to press the ball of the foot up towards the ceiling and then point the toes. So we're moving from flexed to demi-point to full point. If you've ever done ballet, you will be familiar with this movement. And we'll do that just a few more times. So we're really articulating through the foot as well as engaging the muscles in the calf and thigh that control parts of the feet. From there, you can relax the foot and then simply circle it in one direction. So the toes are moving around the ankle a couple of rounds. And then very casually turn the circles in the opposite direction. Really articulating through the toes and the foot. And from here, relax the foot. And if you wish, you can keep the bend on the knee, or you can, with the hand at the back of the thigh, maybe work towards a slightly straighter leg, pressing equally through the heel and the ball of your foot and spreading the toes really nice and wide, which sometimes we refer to as sunshining the feet. And when you're ready, as you exhale, rebend the top knee, release the foot all the way to the mat with the knee pointing up, and then we'll swap sides. So we'll interlace the hands, but the unusual way, so we move one pinky finger over, bring the hands in front of the right shin, and again, if you wish, you can extend the left leg along the mat, seeing if we can draw the right knee a little bit closer towards the right armpit, aiming it past the right rib cage. And again, to ease into that stretch, you could simply rotate and limber your right hip joints by moving the knee a few times, maybe circling in each direction. Just a bit of free play here of movement. And just for a couple of breaths, keep the knee drawing in. From here, we'll bring the hands again with the unusual interlace behind the knee. We'll reach the foot up towards the ceiling. Again, bend the knee as much as is good for you. And just a couple of rounds here, we'll flex the toes towards the shin, and then demi-point, we're pressing the ball of the foot up towards the ceiling and then pointing, the big toe reaches towards the ceiling. Flex the foot, demi-point, point. And just a couple of rounds here. flex, demi-point, point. Flex, demi-point, and point. After this final round, we'll circle the toes around the ankle a couple of times, just in one direction, really articulating through our toes as we do that. And very smoothly reversing the circles in the opposite direction. From here, when you're ready, you can again either keep the bend on the top knee or press equally through the ball and heel of your top foot, really extending through the leg but not allowing your knee to fully lock, especially at the beginning of class. Sunshining your toes apart. When you're ready, as you exhale, draw the knee back into the chest, and then we'll let the left knee meet us in the chest with the both hands squeezing the knees in towards the chest. Let your arms come by your side into cactus arms. So bring the elbows to shoulder height and then bend at the elbows. From here, we'll come into a moving twist. So as you exhale, let the knees roll over to the left, and let your gaze travel in the opposite direction. As you inhale, bring the knees and head to center. As you exhale, let the knees drop over to the right. The gaze travels to the left. And we'll just keep that movement going. Again, trying as much as we can to match the movement to the length of our own breath cycle. And you don't have to let the knees go all the way over to one side, as I am probably repeating myself like a broken record. But it is very early on in the practice and the body does tend to warm up. And once it does, usually there's a little bit more space for us to move and stretch into. But at the beginning of class, it's always better to be a little bit more tentative and a little bit more conservative with our movements. And we'll make this our final round. The next time that you come back from the right side of the mat, we'll bring the knees back into center. Squeeze them in just for a brief moment. And here you can again separate the knees. You could either keep a hold of the knees. If you can reach the soles up towards the ceiling, then you can grab hold of the ankles. And if that's within easy reach, you might even be able to get hold of the outer edges of your feet so that you come into happy baby pose. And you could simply straighten one leg at a time to have a little rock through the spine, which is a nice little massage for the back of the body. Eventually find a little bit of stillness and draw your sitting bone your sacrum actually towards the ground. So that last bony bit of the spine before your bottom starts, see if you can almost flatten the entire back. So the shoulders are drawing down, the knees are aiming in towards the armpits, and the very, very lowest part of the hips is in contact with the mat. Gently, when you're ready, release the feet, draw the knees in, or reach the left arm all the way up and overhead and then roll over to the left side of our mat with the right arm to support us there. We press into the right hand to come all the way up to seated, and then spinning our way to the front of the mat. From here, crossing the legs, hands go in front. You can roll over the knees and find your way into a tabletop. From your tabletop position, make sure that you've got your wrists directly underneath your shoulders and the knees directly underneath the hips. From there, we'll gently tuck under the toes and lift the sitting bones up and back into our downward facing dog. You can, as always, keep a really generous bend on the knees here and have a little pedal through the feet. Of course, downward dog is one of our first forward bends and folds. So we want to ease into our feet. We might lift really high onto the tiptoes for a moment and bending the right knee, lowering the left heel all the way down and back as far as we can. Swapping sides, we inhale all the way onto the tiptoes again, bend the left knee, press the right heel down and back. Just a couple of rounds in that same way, bending one knee, dropping the opposite heel down. And from here, when you're ready, walk the feet in towards the hands, stepping very gently, feet hip distance once you get to the front of the mat. Actually, let's have the feet shoulder distance a little bit wider. Grab hold of opposite elbows and have a little sway side to side. Let the crown of the head hang heavy. And once you find a little bit of stillness, swap the forearm that you've got on top and have a little nod of the head yes and a little shake of the head no to check in with the muscles around your neck. Gradually bring the hands under the shoulders so that you can heel toe your feet back underneath the hips. On an inhale, let the spine round up, stacking one vertebra on top of the next. As you come to stand, let the shoulders and head be the final things to lift. And then relax the shoulders down the back. From here, ground down for a moment through the four corners of your feet to your big toe, pinky toe, as well as the outer edges of your heels. And we'll come through a few rounds of Surya Namaskar A, Sun Salutation A, to build a little bit of heat in the body. So as you inhale, float the arms all the way out and overhead. You can lift the gaze towards your thumbs and bring the palms to touch if you wish. As you exhale, you hinge from the hips to fold forward and swan dive all the way down into your legs for Uttanasana, standing forward bend. As you inhale, you lengthen the spine halfway, hands on top of the shins, the shoulders roll back and crown of the head is lengthening forwards. As you exhale, you keep that length you've just created in your spine, and if you need to, bend the knees to fold all the way back into the legs. Plant the hands under the shoulders as you inhale from here. Step the left foot back, step the right foot back into a high plank position, feet hip distance, shoulders on top of your wrists and hips in line with the shoulders. Tuck your front hip points in towards the lower rib cage. Let the crown of the head lengthen forward. For a moment, stay and really focus on pressing the floor away from you. Spin the inner elbows forward and then gently lower the knees where they are. Keep the elbows tucking in as you start to lean forward and lower the chest all the way down to the floor. Roll the shoulders back as you inhale to lift the upper back into Cobra Pose, Bhujangasana. Exhale to lower all the way down. With the inhale, come up to tabletop and tuck under your toes. Exhale takes you all the way back into your downward facing dog, Ardha Mukha Svanasana. Bend the knees deeply to walk the feet forward towards the hands. Feet hip distance when you get there. Let the spine lengthen halfway. Roll the shoulders back. Inhale. Exhale, fold back into the legs. Soften the knees as you inhale to sweep the arms all the way up and overhead. Lift the gaze towards your fingertips. As you exhale, fold all the way back down, swan dive into the legs. Lengthen the spine halfway, Ardha Uttanasana. Exhale, fold back into the legs, and again, bend your knees if you need to connect belly and thighs in Uttanasana, standing forward bend. On an inhale, plant the hands under the shoulders, step your right foot back, step the left foot back into your high plank. Again, feet hip distance, hands underneath your shoulders, shoulders and hips in one line, connecting the front of your hip points to the lower ribs, crown of the head reaching forward, pressing the floor away and actively engaging the legs. Slowly as you exhale, lower the knees, tuck the elbows in towards the ribs and start to bring the shoulders forward as you lower all the way down. Pressing the tops of the feet into the ground as you inhale. Draw the center of your chest towards the front of your mat, lifting the upper back. As you exhale, fold all the way back down. Inhale to press all the way up to your tabletop and tuck under the toes. Exhale to come back to downward facing dog, Ardha Mukha Svanasana. Soften the knees to walk the feet forward towards the hands. Feet hip distance when you get there. Inhale, let the spine lengthen. Exhale to fold all the way back in. Soft knees as you inhale, sweep the arms up and overhead. Lift the gaze towards your thumbs if you wish. Exhale to fold all the way back in. Lift the spine halfway, inhale. Exhale, fold back in. Hands under the shoulders as you inhale. From here, we'll step the left foot all the way to the back of the mat and lower the back knee down, untucking the toes. As you inhale, the front heel draws towards the back knee and you lift the arms into just a very brief low lunge, spinning the pinky fingers in towards one another. Keep the gaze forward, just down your nose. Engage the legs. As you exhale, let the left hand come to the inside of your right foot. Let your top fingertips reach as high as they can, so you're creating more space between the shoulder blades. And then tuck your back toes under and lift the back knee. Still drawing your right hip in towards the center line. Maybe you're lifting the gaze towards your top thumb, pressing the back heel away. And from here, using our inhale and the top hand, we're going to lift up into a standing high lunge twist, reaching the fingertips apart. You could have the gaze forward, which is slightly easier, or maybe all the way over to the right side of your mat, maybe having a little peek at your thumb at the back of the mat. And then from here, back hand goes to the back thigh. Let the left fingertips reach all the way up and overhead into a standing side bend in your high lunge. As you exhale, you windmill the arms to the inside of your front foot, reaching your front knee and back heel away from one another so that you create some space in the hip joint in your very active lizard lunge. Then plant the hands at the front of your mat and step your front foot to the back and find your high plank with the feet hip distance. Lower down via the knees, tuck the elbows in. Chaturanga Dandasana as you exhale to the floor. Let the inhale float the shoulders back and up into your cobra pose, lifting from the spine. As you exhale, fold all the way down. Inhale to press yourself up to tabletop, tucking under the toes as you exhale. Let the sitting bones float up and back into downward facing dog, Ardha Mukha Svanasana. Soften the knees and walk the feet forward towards the hands as we prepare for second side. Inhale to lengthen the spine halfway. Exhale, fold back into your legs. Soft knees as you inhale, upward salute. You reach the arms up and overhead, lifting the gaze if you wish. As you exhale, fold back into the legs. Lengthen the spine halfway, roll the shoulders back. Exhale to fold back in. On an inhale, plant the hands underneath your shoulders. Step the right foot one leg length back and bring the right knee to the floor, untucking the toes. Engage your front heel towards the back knee and then lift the arms up and overhead into your low lunge. Pinky fingers spin in, lifting the gaze, but still keeping it all the way towards the front of the mat, straight ahead. Lift the center of your chest a little bit higher if you can here. As you exhale, right fingertips to the inside of your right foot, left fingers reaching towards the ceiling into a simple low lunge twist. And then tucking the back toes under, you lift the back knee, pressing the back heel away from you, really reaching through the fingertips and spinning the center of the chest towards the ceiling. Optional to lift the gaze towards your top thumb. And here with the breath and with the help of our top hand, we're going to ground down through our feet and inhale all the way into a twisted standing high lunge, reaching through the fingertips. Again, we can have the gaze forward, which is helpful for balance. We could take the gaze over to the left side of our mat or all the way to the back thumb for a little bit of an extra challenge. Back hand goes to the back thigh, right fingertips reach up and overhead into that standing side bend. On the inhale, windmill the arms all the way forward to the inside of your front foot. Let your left knee and right heel move in opposite directions to create space in the hips. And then frame the front foot with both hands as you exhale. Step the front foot to the back into a high lunge for a moment. Find that the high plank. So press the heels back, reach crown of the head forward. When you're ready, with an exhale, lower the knees to the ground. Tuck the elbows in, but let the shoulders travel forward. Come all the way to the ground. Inhale, pressing into your hands. Press the tops of the feet into the ground. Lift the spine just a fraction into your cobra pose, engaging the muscles either side of the spine. Exhale to come down. Inhale to press all the way up to your tabletop. Exhale takes you back to downward facing dog. From here, as you exhale, bend your knees deeply and then walk the feet forward towards the hands, one step at a time. Feet hip distance once you arrive. Inhale to lengthen the spine halfway. Exhale, fold back into the legs. On the inhale, plant the fingers underneath your shoulders. Step the left foot back about a leg length and then walk your right foot to the outer edge of the mat to create some space for the hips. From here, ground the back foot to the floor. So you might have about a 45-degree angle on the back foot or toes. Right hand to the inside of your right foot. Left arm gently lifts all the way up and overhead. We'll make our way into Utthita Trikanasana, triangle pose. So we'll start to draw the right hip back in space, pressing down through the front big toe and the outer edge of the back foot, spinning the chest open again in that twist. You could even be on your fingertips, which might make it a little bit easier to roll your lower rib cage forward and roll the top ribs backwards. Reaching through those fingertips for your last few breaths here. Pressing into the feet, maybe lifting the gaze towards your top thumb if that's easy for the balance. And gently from here, top hand comes all the way to the floor. Bend the front knee and then walk your way to the left edge of your mat. Spin the feet parallel to each other, so all 10 toes are pointing towards the left long side of the mat. And again, you could keep the knees really generously bent here if that's helpful for you to feel a lot of freedom in the spine. Or plant the right hand underneath the right shoulder here. As you inhale, left arm lifts up into a simple twist. Again, you're rolling lower ribs forward, top ribs back. Optional to go for a half bind here. You can spin the top palm behind you and then see if you can tuck it towards the opposite hip crease. Still lifting that top shoulder, keeping your breath even and unlocking your bottom elbow. When you're ready, that top hand unravels, bring it underneath its own shoulder. And on an inhale, right arm lifts up towards the ceiling into a twist on the second side. Again, very optional to stay here. Focus on this basic alignment or spin the top palm behind you. Tuck it towards the opposite hip for a half bind. Lifting your top shoulder, spin the chest open. Stay for your last few rounds of breath. Maybe you're lifting the gaze up. On an exhale, top hand comes down. You can turn the toes towards the outer corners of your mat. And from here, let your hips sink quite low. Bend your knees deeply and sweep the arms all the way up and overhead into horse stance. So let the hips descend, press the knees away from each other. You can keep the hands on the hips if that's helpful, especially if you have high blood pressure. Let the crown of the head reach up, but everything below the waist draw down. So you're creating length in the body. Pressing the knees out for our last few rounds of breath here. Spin the pinky fingers in. Give yourself a little bit of a smile to remind yourself that your facial muscles are not involved. And your last couple rounds of breath, find a little bit of stillness. Let the legs shake if they need to. Embrace that strength that is building in your body as we speak. And then when you're ready, turn from your feet to face all the way forward to the front of your mat. Frame your front foot and tuck the back toes under. As you exhale, step your front foot to the back. Inhale here to find your high plank. Lowering down via the knees or one straight line. Chaturanga Dandasana as you exhale all the way to the floor. Inhale into your cobra pose or upward facing dog as you inhale. And exhale to come down. Inhale to come up to tabletop via the knees. You tuck the toes under and exhale all the way back into downward facing dog, Ardha Mukha Svanasana. Bend the knees deeply to walk or step the feet towards the hands. Lengthen the spine halfway as you inhale. Exhale, fold back into your legs. On the inhale, plant the hands under the shoulders. From here, step the right foot about one leg length back. Again, spin the heel down, turn the toes out by about 45 degrees, and then shimmy your left foot a little bit to the outer edge of your mat to create space for the hips. Left hand to the inside of your left foot, right arm reaches up towards the ceiling into Utthita Trikanasana, triangle pose. Again, we're drawing that left hip back in space. Right hip rolls just gently forward. Pressing down through the front big toe and the outer edge of the back foot. Lower ribs spin forward, top ribs moving back in space. Maybe lifting the gaze up towards our top thumb if the balance is very easy. And very gently windmilling that top hand all the way to the floor. Bend your front knee. And then walk your hands over to the right edge of the mat. Bring the feet parallel to each other. All 10 toes pointing towards the right edge of the mat. From here, you can bend the knees quite deeply so that you can allow your spine to release towards the floor. If you are able to, then you can start working towards straightening the legs completely. And of course, if there's a lot of space for you to move, then you can allow the crown of the head to draw towards the ground. Maybe walking the fingertips in line with your heels or all the way to the opposite side of the mat so that you start to walk the fingers, maybe even past the mat. We're going to stay for a couple of rounds of breath and see if we can work a little bit with the breath. So as you inhale, you might find that there's a little bit of a sense that you're coming out of the pose slightly because the belly is filling with air. And then as you exhale, as the belly empties, you might find a little bit more space to fold in. And so over time, as we're here for a couple of extra breaths, you might be able to fold a little bit closer towards the legs. You might straighten the legs just a fraction more. But again, we're moving mindfully. We're not overdoing anything. Eventually, you're going to walk the hands underneath your shoulders if they are at the back of the mat. And regardless of how flexible you are here, have a little bend on the knees. And then see if you can sway the spine side to side a bit. You can even let the hips and knees move with you as you do that. Just finding a little bit of more free play kind of movement. So you could even roll the spine and roll the chest in one and the other direction. So really find some unusual movements in the spine that you wouldn't normally be able to do. But here, because your spine is sort of suspended in the air and working with gravity rather than against it, which is what it does most of the day, you might be able to find a little bit more freedom in the vertebra. And from here, when you're done, walk the hands all the way back to the front of the mat. Turn your toes to point forward. Plant the hands either side of the front foot, and as you exhale, step it back into a high plank. Feet hip distance when you get there. Again, press the heels back. Crown of the head draws forward. Engage the legs. Draw the front hip points towards the lower ribs. Gently bring the knees to the ground. Tuck the elbows in towards your ribcage and then lower down in one straight line, Chaturanga Dandasana. Inhale to roll the shoulders back. Lift the center of the chest forward for Cobra pose. And exhale all the way down. Press into your hands as you inhale to come to a tabletop position. Tuck the toes under as you exhale to come all the way up and back into your downward facing dog. Slowly from here, when you're ready, bring the knees to the ground as wide as is comfortable, big toes touch. Let your sitting bones reach all the way back towards the heels into child's pose, Balasana. And gently here from a child's pose, walk the hands in towards you and round through the spine to briefly come to a kneeling position, just so we can shimmy the feet out from underneath us and bring them all the way in front of us. From here, have your knees bent, feet hip distance. We'll straighten the right leg forward and draw the left knee in towards the chest here. And if you're noticing that your spine is already rounding, then you can roll up or fold up the back of your mat just a couple times so that you can elevate your sitting bones on top of it, which should give you just a gentle lift of the spine to lengthen upwards. As you inhale, reach the left fingertips up towards the ceiling, and then as you exhale, spin the fingers behind the sitting bones. As you inhale, right arm reaches up towards the ceiling. You can either wrap that top arm around the top knee, or you can hook the elbow all the way across the thigh. Make sure that you flex your right toes towards your face, so you're still keeping the front leg really active and the heel pressing down into the floor. As you inhale, find the weight in the back of your sitting bones and then grow tall through the entire spine. As you exhale, start to twist the chest open towards the left side of the mat. And continue to work with the breath in that way. So as you inhale, grow a little bit taller through the crown of the head, lifting. As you exhale, twist the chest open just a fraction, if there's space to move. And if you lean just a little bit more into your left sitting bone, you might find that as you exhale, you can firm up your lower belly by engaging your abdominal muscles and contracting them, which then allows you to twist a little bit more from your upper spine, your thoracic spine. We'll be here for just our final few rounds of breath. On your next inhale, release your top hand. Take your gaze all the way to the front of the mat and then plant both of your hands to the outside of your right thigh. As you exhale, briefly bow down and derotate the spine in the opposite direction, and then come back up to seated. Allow your left knee to open out to the side, preparing for Janice, head to knee pose. I always joke about how badly named this pose is, but I'll spare you that joke today. We'll have the hands behind the sitting bones, lifting the chest. And of course here you can have as much of a bend on your front knee as you like, because even sitting in 90-degree angle is quite tricky if your hamstrings are very tight. Make sure that you flex the toes towards your face, and you're either way, regardless of how bent your knee is, you're pressing the front heel down and almost drawing it towards yourself. So you're activating the hamstring and making this a really active stretch. And then gently, if you wanted to fold a little bit further forward, you bring the hands in front of you and gently walk the fingers towards the front foot. Now, bend your knee as much as you need to so that you can grab hold of the outer edges of your front foot, and then with the belly on top of your thigh, start to press the belly down as you exhale and maybe find a little bit of space to fold in. And if you're very bendy, then eventually the entire thigh and back of the calf will touch the floor. You don't want the back of your knee touching the ground, because that would mean your leg is in hyperextension, which is really unhealthy. If that's the case, bend your knee, please. And you're still actively drawing your toes back so that you are activating the muscles around the knee joint and keeping the knee safe. With each inhale, you might be able to use the purchase that you have from pulling on your front foot to lift the chest just slightly. Let the belly fill with air. Draw the chest a little bit further forward, and then as you exhale, sink back into that fold. So even though we're in a forward fold, it seems like a very static pose. We're very actively working into it. On your next inhale, plant the hands either side of your front leg and start to walk your way in. Support your right knee. Actually, no, support your right knee. I'm on the wrong side. You guys are probably all on the right side. To lift it up, and then we'll bring the soles of the feet to touch. You might have if your feet are quite flexible, the soles of the feet pointing up as if the feet are like a open book in front of you. And then make sure that you have about 2 hand lengths distance from the heels to your torso. Plant the hands on top of your shins and see if you can rock onto the front edge of your sitting bones here. So if you imagine the pelvis so your hips here, your pelvis, as a bowl, you have the bowl slightly almost tipping forward as if you're trying to spill the contents of the bowl out. So you're not all the way back here, but you're tipping forward. If that's not the case, you want to elevate your sitting bones even higher so that action starts to happen for you. With the hands on the shins, if you can, as you inhale, you draw the shoulders back and lift the chest up towards your chin. And maybe here you're able to draw the chest a little bit further forward towards your feet. If that's the case, you can walk the hands, fingertips to the front edge of the mat. Still working with a fairly straight spine until you get just a couple of inches away from your feet, at which point you could stack one hand on top of the other or make fists with the hands so that you can rest your forehead on top of them. And maybe here you can start to allow the chest to draw towards the floor if you're very, very low. But as I often say, really no version is better than the other. It's just a case that some of us maybe have done this practice for a longer period of time, or we are naturally more flexible, in which case we have to go a little bit further than other people in order to experience the same amount of stretch. Gently here, as you inhale, walk the hands back in towards yourself. And from here now we support both knees with the hands to bring the feet flat to the floor, and we'll change sides. So left leg goes forward, right knee draws in. We're flexing the left toes towards the face and actively pressing the heel down. Again, feel free to bend the front knee as much as you like. As you inhale, the right arm lifts up and you're going to lengthen through the right side of the waist and then spin that hand behind you. As you inhale, left arm lifting up, lengthening through left side of the waist. As you exhale, either wrapping that arm around the top knee or hooking it all the way across the thigh. Again, if you can, you lean a little bit forward so that you can really ground down through the right sitting bone. And then firm up your lower belly. As you inhale, lengthen the spine. As you exhale, see if you can focus the twist into the upper spine here. And continuously working with that movement of the breath, lengthen up as you inhale. Let the belly fill with air. As you exhale, firm your abdominal muscles. See if you can twist the chest open to the right side of the mat. Staying for just a couple of rounds of breath here. When you're ready from here, release your top hand first. Take your gaze forward to the front of the mat. Plant both hands to the outside of your left thigh, and briefly as you exhale, just de-rotate the spine and bow down towards the floor. Inhale to come all the way back up. Let your right knee open out to the side, sole of the foot to the inside of your thigh. For a moment here, again, hands behind the sitting bones. Flex your left toes towards your face, press the heel down and actively use the stickiness of your mat to draw the heel back and engage the hamstrings here. Again, bend the front knee as much as you need to, as much as makes that bearable for you. You don't want to be working too far into the stretch already. If you want to go a little bit further, you bring the hands in front of you. And again, bend that front knee, bring the belly all the way onto your thigh. And grab hold of the outer edges of the foot so that as you exhale, you might be able to start to press the thigh down using your belly in order to come a little bit further into that forward fold. And remember, with the hands on the foot, as you inhale, you use the foot to pull the chest forward as if you were drawing the collarbones towards your front big toe. And as you exhale, you fold in. And people always laugh at me for saying, you know, draw your collarbones towards your front big toe. But I've been on Instagram, I've seen someone do that. So it does happen. It's just, I think for most of us, body proportion wise, it never will, which is perfectly fine. We don't work for Cirque du Soleil anyway, so we don't need it. And, you know, one other thing I always like to remind my students of is a thing that one of my favorite Ashtanga teachers, Richard Freeman, always says that, you know, the length of your hamstrings, luckily, has nothing to do with how enlightened you are, which of course is still the ultimate goal of yoga, to reach enlightenment. So that's a saving grace of not being super flexible. Make these your final few rounds of breath here. Very gently, when you're ready, walk the fingertips in towards yourself. Use the left hand under the left knee to bring it all the way up, and then right hand to the outside of the right knee, feet hip distance, knees pointing towards the ceiling. Have a moment to simply windscreen wiper the knees left and right to release any remaining tension in the legs. Hands can be behind the sitting bones to support yourself there. And for a moment here with the feet flat, pressing into the hands, lift the chest up towards the chin. So you're going into almost a slightly arched position of the spine. You can walk the fingertips in towards yourself. And then gently release the hands. You can unravel your mat if you folded it. And find any comfortable seat. Heels in one line, shins crossed, whatever works for you, yogi. From here, bring the palms to touch in front of the heart center. Bow your forehead towards the fingertips. And use this very, very final moment of your practice to give yourself just a little bit of gratitude for showing up on your mat in the first place. I often reiterate that that is actually the hardest part of yoga, just showing up. And dedicating this time to yourself, to your body, your well-being. And from here, you might want to plant your sankalpa, your good intention for the rest of today, maybe the rest of your week. And as always, if you can't think of anything good for yourself, send that good intention to somebody else who might need it more than you do. The light in me recognizes the light in you. Namaste, yogi. So, as always, thank you so much for joining me on the mat today. If you have any questions, suggestions, or feedback, pop it in the comments section down below. Of course, if you enjoyed today's practice, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Share it with your friends. Spread the good word. If you wanted to find me anywhere else online, I'll leave all of those links in the video description. And I hope to see you back on the mat next week for another slow flow with me. See you soon, yogi. Bye.